In this video, I'm going to attempt to answer the question, what are we designing when we design for online learning? And that word for is important to me. I'll tell you why. We're going to start with a little quote that apparently is attributed to Albert Einstein from where I read it. I don't know if it really is. It says, "I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn." So instead of thinking about directing learners, we're thinking about supporting them, providing conditions in which they can learn. This goes to the idea of agency. When learners make their own choices, when they can engage with their own ideas, it's been shown that they're more successful. And so when we're designing for online learning, it can be helpful to think about how am I going to set up a structure that's going to help others learn. As an instructional designer, sometimes you're also setting up courses for other instructors to teach. And so even more so, you're not necessarily focusing on the teaching as much as the environment. So we're going to think about this using this framework, the 5 spaces for design in education. And again, this is important to me, the word for. These are spaces that we can look at to help us think about what the things we're going to design to create a successful, engaging online course. So the spaces are artifacts, processes, experiences, systems, culture, and you can learn more about that in other videos. But I just want to talk about how we can apply it to online teaching. So starting with culture, what kind of culture? It's useful to think about your own beliefs about teaching and learning and what you want so that you can be intentional in designing for that. So, for example, my courses, I strive to have high engagement. It's really important to me that people have creativity, not in necessarily artsy creativity, but creativity as in thinking of new ideas, making new connections cognitively and content-wise. I like there to be collaborative exploration where we explore new things and learn from each other. It's important for me to see challenging work and to challenge learners and to really support and emphasize growth, kind of supporting people in their own learning processes. So here are those elements again. When I look at systems are interlocking pieces that affect each other. So in education, the main systems we have are like credit systems, university systems, like what a credit hour means, how much it costs, goes with the financial systems, it goes with degrees. On a course level, you might consider thinking about grading and how that works together with your vision for culture. So this is a just brief one for me. When I was thinking about how I support this using our systems, one thing I do is the way that I think about grading is either I just want to see that you did something and engaged in something, or I want to give you lots of opportunities to get feedback and revise. And so that's part of how I try to support that growth and that engagement and that challenge. Another thing I try to do is I think of due dates as real life and what's reasonable, what's important, what's not. So for me personally, due dates aren't necessarily the most important thing ever. If we're working with a group, then yes, it's important because we all have to do something together. But if we're a few days late in something we're doing ourselves, that doesn't disrupt the learning environment. And so thinking about attendance and grades and such in the systems, those are decisions I make when I design courses. Experiences is a little more rich. I think about what do I want my students to feel and see and hear when they participate in my course? How do I want them to experience this engagement and creativity? One thing that I try to do is I try to do at least some videos that include my face. Sometimes these lecture videos, I don't necessarily do that, but when I do weekly welcome videos and such, I try to be a person so that they feel connected. I try to build interactions for meaningful peer interactions. I try to keep it relevant by choosing course projects that students can personalize and make it fit their own interests, their own needs, other parts of their world so that they're useful and relevant to them. Processes are like templates. They're things that we do over and over again. So in an online course, a lot of the process might be if you have a certain system for course modules where you have an introduction, you have material, you have assignments. Of course, we don't need to be afraid of mixing up that format, but establishing that can create a process that can help people feel comfortable and go through it. So I have to think about what processes I'm going to put into place that's going to support this culture that I want to develop and the environment I want to develop. And so I choose usually to have that consistent structure with those intro videos, providing content, having different types of assignments. When I create rubrics for grading, those rubrics are like processes. They're how we're going to evaluate something. I try to focus only on the pieces of the assignment that are relevant to establishing the skills. So you might notice I'm often not as concerned about writing quality as I am about showing that you understand ideas and you know how to apply them. That's just a personal preference. Different people have different philosophies about learning, but that's a decision that I make in my course design. Finally, artifacts. Artifacts are all those little pieces that come together to make the process, experience, systems, and culture. So you'll notice, for example, whenever I do questions, I very rarely am going to do a multiple choice quiz. I like to have open-ended questions that allow for creativity and for people to find their own ideas. I like tools like Perusall that allows us to have discussions around a text instead of just our own individual ideas. I like to build projects that allow, like I said earlier, you to connect it to your own life. You can make it fit your own needs. These are just some elements that I try to put together to support the type of class I want. So ultimately, that's how the spaces fit together in my teaching. It doesn't mean that my teaching is the right way of teaching. Research has shown that when teachers bring themselves into their work, build on their own beliefs and feelings and experiences, they're more effective. So that means that someone else might design a course very differently than me, and they might be more effective than I would be how they design it. But they might not be as effective using my design. So it's important to think about how can I create something that can be personalized, that can support my own intention. And when you're creating an online course other instructors are going to use, it's important to think about what things can I put in here that can support instructors to bring in their own ideas and their own personalities into the learning so that they can design their full culture system, experience, processes, and artifacts. Alrighty, takeaways. First, the five spaces framework can help us focus our online course design. It helps us be intentional about what we're building. Providing conditions for learning includes being intentional across, that's what I just said, it'd be very intentional across it, and strive for coherence across the five spaces. Sometimes you might have a policy that doesn't really support the culture you're trying to create, and so looking for that coherence across can help you be more effective. Thanks for watching.